I vow to protect the Empire from treasonous ideologies.
For the opening ceremony, the trainees sat in the common room as Professor EMBRE, in excruciating detail, explained the Academy schedule, rules to follow, and tips for success in the program.
Is something wrong?
Instead of listening, Yahshi analyzed his earlier conversation with Commander Roz.
Yahshi, you trust me, don't you?
The Guardian had ignored Yashi's question, demanding blind trust.
You may skip classes if you wish, but that won't do you any favors. Unless you're sick or injured, I recommend you show up. And do so punctually. As for your time off the clock, rooms of instruction are open at all hours in case you'd like to train or study on your own. You can access the infirmary on the 5th floor for first aid supplies as needed. The only areas off limits are the Guardian quarters, located through that door there.
The bell rang as Professor EMBRE pointed to a door across the common room.
That covers everything. The dining hall is through that door by the staircase. Enjoy your supper.
As Yahshi followed the other trainees to the dining hall, he peeked over his shoulder and spotted Professor EMBRE making her way toward the Academy's front door.
I wonder where she's going.
The dining hall included 10 round tables, each with 4 chairs and a tablecloth that glowed under the candlelight of jeweled chandeliers. The opposite wall from the common room was made completely of glass, featuring the expanse of greenery that encompassed the building. It was the time of day when the sun made its rare appearance, slipping under the clouds for a few minutes to set on the horizon. The gold and pink hues spewed between trees in the woods.
Whoa! Take a look at that glass! It's incredible!
It truly is. What a gorgeous view.
I'm at the window! It's massive!
Yahshi filed behind Pinto in a line of trainees by a serving table. Each of the 20 trays offered a main plate of steak, side dish of vegetables, package of crackers, and cloth napkin with cutlery. When Yahshi reached the front of the line, he grabbed a tray and faced the tables. The cold steel made him shiver as his eyes hopped from face to face, searching for someone to sit with. On their first day, social circles were already beginning to form. Quax was sitting at a table with his roommates, Ko and Sana, and although Yahshi would normally sit in silence at Quax's cafeteria table in Citra, he figured he should give him some space. Instead, Yahshi approached Pinto, who had just claimed an empty seat.
Can I join you?
Pinto looked up at Yahshi with a frown.
You don't have to ask. It's odd, if you ask.
Yahshi pursed his lips and took a seat.
Yahshi, are you seeing this?
Pinto's frown morphed into a grin as he unfolded his napkin. He stretched his arm out, dangling the fabric in front of Yashi's face.
My napkin has thin golden lines embroidered into it. They're so small you can hardly see them, but they're there.
Yahshi studied the fabric with a hum of faked interest.
How could he be so fascinated by a napkin?
Pinto spread the napkin across his lap.
I can't believe this is all for us. With treatment this special, we might as well be royalty.
Yahshi copied Pinto, spreading his own napkin over his lap. He had never eaten a meal this fancy before, and certainly not at school. Even the best lunches at Citra Secondary were under-seasoned and served cold. The complex aroma of the steaming steak made Yashi's mouth water.
I can't remember the last time I had beef.
It took all of his strength not to stuff the food into his face with his bare hands. His first bite dissolved in his mouth, the spices both foreign and comforting all at once. Yahshi and Pinto enjoyed their food without speaking, their thoughts lost in the chatter of the room, before Yahshi remembered Professor EMBRE's strange exit.
Where do you think Professor EMBRE was going earlier?
What?
After the opening ceremony, she was leaving the building.
I don't know, Yahshi, she's a guardian. They're busy all the time.
But she's an Academy Guardian.
Pinto's knuckles turned white, his grip on his fork and knife tightening.
What's that got to do with anything? She's still a guardian in the research division. Maybe they need her in the investigation office sometimes.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to annoy you.
I'm not annoyed, it's just a weird question, that's all.
As Yahshi prepared his next bite, VELL caught his eye. She was sitting at an adjacent table alone, cutting her steak into bite-sized pieces with jagged pulls of her knife. He figured that being the only girl in the program must have felt isolating.
VELL!
They flinched in unison. VELL, surprised someone had called her name, and Yahshi, surprised that the someone had been him. She met his gaze.
Do you want to join us?
Pinto leaned toward him.
You know her?
Not really.
VELL studied the other tables as though gauging her options before standing with her tray. She took a seat in the chair between Yahshi and Pinto. A small object struck the floor as she scooted her chair in. VELL leaned over to grab the fallen marble. She slipped it back into her pocket, avoiding eye contact with Yahshi and Pinto as she continued to cut her steak.
That was...
Yes.
Had she really stolen the marble from Quax's pocket during the match without him noticing? Without any of us noticing?
How? It doesn't make sense.
VELL took a bite, offering no explanation.
Why did you take the marble?
Yahshi was more curious about her motive.
I just wanted to see if I could.
Pinto tugged her collar.
So you can't tie a tie, but you can pull off a discreet maneuver like that in the middle of a sparring match?
She pushed his arm away.
They're completely different skills.
That's fair.
Yahshi locked his eyes on Quax.
Vel, I think you should give it back. We all didn't bring much from home. The marbles could be important to him.
No, she can't do that. If she puts her cards on the table too early, she won't have any leverage.
Huh, you're smarter than you look.
Pinto raised his chin.
What do I look like then?
Intimidating. Childish.
That's a bit contradictory, don't you think?
I've met intimidating children.
The door busted open. Another guardian, likely in his 50s, rolled a metal cart into the room. He had a pointy gray beard and bushy brows. The badges on his shoulders marked him as a member of the medical division. And unlike the other Academy guardians, he wasn't carrying swords or a bow.
Dr. Blimmery, Guardian Blimmery, Blim Blim, whatever you'd like to call me is just fine.
The guardian bobbed his head back and forth, dancing to a silent tune as he rolled his cart from table to table. When he reached Yashi's group, he set a glass of red juice by VELL's tray and winked at her, which made Pinto raise a brow. Dr. Blimmery served the boys their juice next, and Pinto watched him like a hawk until he wheeled his cart away.
Wow. This morning everything was normal and now we've got fancy rooms, fancy clothes, fancy food, even fancy juice. It's more incredible than I ever could have imagined.
VELL chewed slowly, glancing at Pinto for only a moment before stabbing her fork into another slice of meat.
Surely you're pleased to be here.
I'm pleased for the pension.
The pension?
That's why we're all here.
No, not all of us. We're still in a horrible state of conflict with the East.
Pinto looked up at the chandeliers, his eye glimmering.
Some of us feel a responsibility to serve Emperor Vakoi and protect our people.
That's admirable.
You know, I really can't tell if you're being sarcastic or not.
Pinto took a sip of his beet juice and cringed.
Ugh. Retract fancy juice from my previous statement.
Yahshi raised his glass, eager to judge for himself.
Did you not hear me warn you?
Despite their negative reactions, VELL took a sip next. She broke out into a fit of coughs and slammed her glass onto the table.
Tastes like poison.
I'm Pinto Dempsey of Frontal, by the way. Yashi's roommate.
VELL, from Miranda.
She steals bread.
Steals bread? What does he mean by that? Oh, come on, don't just ignore me. Did you two know each other before getting selected?
As VELL tuned Pinto out, Yahshi noticed a boy sitting with the Brackle twins. He recognized him by the red bandana around his head.
Hey, Pinto. He's from your town too, isn't he?
Dice Bayan. I'd stay away from him if I were you.
Yahshi and VELL stared at Pinto, waiting for his reasoning.
He's from the East. He and his parents moved to Frontal when he was just a toddler. But I have a feeling they're false converts, faking their loyalty to Emperor Vakoi to funnel information back east.
Like spies? Why would you think that?
It's not like it hasn't happened before. Remember a few years ago when the research division traced over a dozen false converts living amongst us? Who's to say there aren't more?
But what makes you think Dice is one of them?
In primary school, he wouldn't let me join him and his friends for a game of hide and seek. He said his parents didn't allow him to play with pirates. The only kind of parent who could raise a kid to mock my eye are the ones who supported the Eastern raids. I wouldn't be surprised if they're affiliated with the underground.
Yahshi grabbed his fork as a distraction, but he had already lost his appetite. Because of one rude comment years ago, Pinto was making a wild accusation against Dice and his family. He carried his grudge like a tool, using it to disguise his prejudice as justified hatred. Yahshi had never met someone so critical of a convert before, but perhaps that was because the Eastern Raiders hadn't targeted Citra during the war. His spirits lifted at the sight of Commander Roz leading a white horse from the field into the woods. Yahshi diverted his attention from the window to Dr. Blimmery, who was chatting up a storm with Quax, Ko, and Senna. Yahshi set his fork down. All 3 guardians were occupied. Pinto bit into a cracker, and his brows jumped.
Wow, it's buttery. I never tasted a packaged cracker that actually tastes buttery.
They are pretty good.
Yahshi stood from the table.
Where are you going?
Restroom. I'll be right back.
He returned to the common room and opened the door to the guardian quarters. Inside was a dark, torch-lit stairway leading to a lower floor. He stepped inside, shut the door behind him, and slowly made his way down.
If I'm going to go against my father's word, mess things up with Quacks, and deal with a prejudiced roommate, it better be for a good cause. I need to know if I can truly trust the Guardians.
At the end of the staircase, he found himself in a cozy room featuring portraits of whom he assumed were previous Academy Guardians. The walls to his left, right, and directly in front of him each featured an identical wooden door. He entered the one to his left at random. The quarter was about twice as large as Yahshi and Pinto's. It included a single bed, desk, expansive bookshelf, and cast iron stove. There were no windows, so Yahshi figured the Guardian quarters were completely underground. He ran his fingers along a shelf of books, reading their titles as he walked.
Guide to Natural Antidepressants. Cultural Significance of Belladonna.
The desk was covered in scattered pages of beautiful writing. He gathered a stack and flipped through them, stopping at a familiar sentence.
The Belladonna Prodigy. Commander Cal of Citra, 18, breaks record as the youngest unit leader in Guardian history.
It was the same line from the Capital Weekly article Yahshi had taken from Citra Market, but this page was handwritten. He continued reading.
After only 6 months in the Guardian Force, Emperor Vakoi promoted her to unit leader, acknowledging her effectiveness in tracing Eastern individuals affiliated with the Underground. The Guardians selected Cal, despite the fact that she murdered Chima. And then there's me, a convert who spent the past 2 years trying to prove that Cal shouldn't have been selected. If anything, I should be a suspect of treason. And they selected VELL too, a thief with poor school attendance. Maybe VELL has a point. What if the Guardians have a tendency to select the wrong kinds of people?
The door creaked open.
Dr. Blimmery?
Yahshi dropped the article and spun around.
Yahshi! For the glory of Vakoi, what are you doing in here?
She had left the building, but evidently not for long.
I'm sorry, Professor.
Answer my question.
Commander Roz made me spar with Quacks. It felt strange.
Yahshi, I vouched for your selection.
She stepped into the room, and Yahshi wished he could run from her without consequences.
Your devotion and intensity of focus is exactly what the research division needs right now. The Underground is always one step ahead of us, and if we could have more clever people like you on the case, maybe we could do something to change that. But this rabbit hole of yours is corrupting your potential to help our people, and it's destroying your emotional state. We are giving you an opportunity here to create a new life for yourself. A life where your actions benefit people, not hurt them. Wouldn't you like to move on and feel better and do good?
Of course I would.
Then you need to understand that trust is a two-way street. If you don't trust us, we can't trust you. And if we can't trust you, we can't let you stay here. We can't help you. Is that logic reasonable?
Yahshi struggled to reply, so she crossed her arms and continued.
Roz and Blimmery will hear of this. If you violate our trust one more time, we'll consider you a lost cause.
I understand, Professor.
Good. Now go upstairs and finish your supper.
Belladonna, Book 1, Nightshade Academy. Written and narrated by Torrefranca. Produced by Torrefranca and Wilson Hensley. Edited and mastered by Juan Pablo Diaz.
How did we get here? Something went wrong. We worked hard for this life that we don't want at all.
Cover art by Mad Studio. Score by Gita Puspita Asri. Theme song composed and produced by James Sinclair-Stott. Starring Jason Brown, Anthony Andreas Echeverri, Melissa White, Alex Bowie, Patrick Viersba, Julia Ristow, David John Bors, Connor Blanc, Cody Keel, Ellie Chua, Ben Autry, Walter Mack.
If it's really true that the sky weeps with us, if it's really true that heroes live in stars.
Featuring the voices of Gwyneth Evans, Jeff Rosenau, Philip Kryanoff, Lucas Hensley, Levi Titus, Angie Eggers, Willem Degar, Allison Prophet, Maria Palmo. Nightshade Academy is produced in association with Lost Island Press.
If it's really true, if it's really true. 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 Remember.